I've done over 1,000 videos and I've probably talked about this speaker 900 of them. This is the Sony SSCS5 and I've lauded it as being the best budget speaker that you can get. But over time, over the last 4 years, things change. I listen to more, I hear more other speakers, and guess what? The king is dead. It's okay. No speakers were hurt in the making of this video. Okay, gonna be real with you. There's another speaker that's gonna replace the Sony SSCS5 as being the best speaker that you can get under $200. And I'm a bit sad about it, but it's okay. Because the Sony SSCS5 is being replaced with the Cambridge Audio SX50. This is a speaker that I actually had in for review way back at the beginning of the channel, and I frankly forgot how good it was. And I noticed that it's still for sale, so I reached out to the fine folks at Cambridge Audio and asked them, hey, do you still make the SX50? And they said, yes, we do still make the SX50. And I said, would you please send me a pair? And these showed up. I turned them on. And you know how it is when you haven't seen a friend for a long time, and then you get together and you guys end up talking till like 3 a.m. and then you both wake up with a hangover? That's what it was like with this SX50 after I listened to them for a while, except I don't drink, so I didn't get a hangover. But I did listen to them for a long time. I lost hours. It's tough when you're on a budget and you only have a couple $100 to spend, and you need a good pair of speakers. And at sub $200, well, you can't be super choosy because there aren't a lot of speakers to choose from. And the speakers that you can choose from generally aren't that good. The Cambridge Audio SX50 is a diminutive speaker when you compare it to the SSCS5 from Sony. Actually, when you compare it to kind of anything. However, if you look closely, you have woofers of the same size and tweeters of the same size. What you do get with the Sony is this super tweeter right here. Does that make a huge difference? Frankly, no. I actually think the Cambridge Audio SX50 has a better top end than the Sony SSCS5, but we'll get into that. SX50 comes with a 5¼ inch treated paper cone woofer. Let's listen to it. Oh yeah. A 1-inch silk dome tweeter. Comes in matte black. Similar finish to the Sony's. I'm not gonna pick it up because I'll probably throw my back out. Similar wrap to the Sony's. It's just basically a black vinyl wrap. Sensitivity 87 dB, which isn't bad for a little speaker of this size. Frequency response 50 Hertz. Sounds pretty low for something this size, right? It's true. It's all true. I don't know if that's plus or minus 6 dB or plus or minus 3 dB, but in listening, it goes lower than you think it would go. And a high frequency roll off of 22 kilohertz, recommended amplifier power, 10 to 100 watts. And they come in at 6.6 pounds. Careful. With a speaker of this size and this weight, you can't expect it to drop bombs on you. But what I was surprised at is that they did go pretty low. I didn't push them really hard, and let's just get this out of the way. These speakers are at their best between 65 dB SPL, that's how loud you're listening in your room, to about 80. After you get above 80, things start to fall apart a little bit, and that's okay because it's a $200 speaker, and frankly, that's what happens to pretty much all $200 speakers. But I spent a long time listening to these, not at my desktop, in my living room, which is a big room, and these almost looked comical next to my fireplace on some big stands. They barely covered the top of the stands because they're so little. Even with intergalactic sub 80 dB, these things did really, really well. What I liked the most about them though was the quality and the nuance of the bass. I had these hooked up to the Cambridge Audio Evo 150. Very expensive integrated amplifier, but I wanted to put something nice on the Cambridge. I wanted to keep it in the family. But I also wanted to see just, hey, could these handle some really high-end electronics? And they could. You're not going to feel the bass in your chest. But what bass you do get is articulate and fast. If you're running these on a desktop, I don't even think you need a subwoofer. If you're running them on a desktop though, you're probably going to need a little bit of a lift around 70 hertz. But even if you don't have an EQ, I think the SX50 are going to be one of the better, probably the best desktop speaker you can get for under $200. My oh my mid-range. Hello by Adele. Baby. Her voice in that song is a little bit haunting, a little bit rich. But if you have a speaker that has a clean mid-range and can resolve some detail, it is just addictive to listen to. And that's the one thing about this speaker that really jumped off the page at me is the level of mid-range clarity. With Adele's voice, but also with the AC/DC, that band, with the crunchy guitars, Highway to Hell and Shoot to Thrill, coming in and just feeling the layers with that electric guitar. And if you have a bump or a rise around 250 to 300 hertz, which is quite popular in some speakers because it makes them feel a lot bigger than they actually are, which is fine. The one thing I don't like about a bump around 200 to 300 hertz though, is it covers up that crunchy, grindy yumminess of electric guitars. This doesn't have a rise right there, and you will hear all of the mid-range wonderment of Adele's voice or AC/DC's guitars. What else did I listen to? Oh, Eulogy by Korn. I always say that you can learn everything you need to know about a speaker or system really if you listen to 2 minutes of Eulogy, because it goes through everything. There's bass bombs, there's treble, there's a lot of mid-range. With the mid-range here, I did feel like there's a bump around 2500 hertz, because with Eulogy, it comes in repetitive. It sounds like someone's calling in a missile strike, but they're not. What they're calling in is wonderful heavy metal music that's recorded really well. I think Tool's kind of like Pink Floyd, if Pink Floyd wasn't dumb and heavier. I know, okay? Listen, don't shoot the messenger. I don't like Pink Floyd. It's okay. I know Pink Floyd is beloved out there amongst our crowd. I just don't like them. I appreciate it. Like when I listen to their songs, I'm like, oh, I can see why people love them. I'm just not one of those people that loves them. I don't remember what I was talking about. I think we're talking about mid-range. Oh, around 2500 hertz, okay? There's a bit of, there's a rise there. And if you're listening at louder volumes above 80 dB, it will get a little bit fatiguing. The cool thing is about these speakers though, is they're so small, if you put them on a regular stand, chances are your ear is gonna be above tweeter level. And when you get your ear above tweeter level, that rise at 2500 hertz is a little bit reduced. But keep in mind, there is a bit of a bump up there, and that's a good thing at lower volumes. It's a bad thing at above about 83 dB, because then these get a little bit more forward in that region. But again, we need to have realistic expectations, because a speaker that's $200 of this size shouldn't be expected to play at 90 dB. I was a little bit surprised though. I got a peak, I think, above 90 dB. But if you're going to listen to these loudly, which you still can, I would put a high pass filter on them. And if you have an EQ, I would bring down 2500 hertz about 1 maybe 1.5 dB if you listen loud. If you don't listen loud, it's fine. Just leave it alone. And when I say don't listen loud, I mean 65 to about 80 dB. Look at that big tweeter. Look at that rubbery surround thing right here. All of that combines to be a lovely top end. These actually remind me a little bit of the Emotiva XT1s or XT2s with the level of clarity that you get out of them. But this is a soft dome tweeter, not a ribbon tweeter, which makes it even more more special. Cymbal decays, really nice. Like I said though, you do get a bit of a rise at 2500 Hertz, but above 4K, these are almost sibilants. So sibilance for me happens around 4 to 6K. They walk right up to it, but then they pull back, which is a great thing because they aren't sibilant, but they are a bit pronounced on top. So a lot of percussion. So Higher Love by Steve Winwood. At the beginning of that song, there's a whole bunch of percussion, and you will hear things with the SX50 that you won't hear with other speakers that are more rolled off. And I am a clarity nut. I am a clarity freak. I like the clarity. I like to hear the music. Like, why wouldn't you want to hear more music? But anyway, top end on this speaker is absolutely wonderful. Flawless at less than $200. Again, keep in mind when this speaker does fall apart, it falls apart in the upper mid-range and the treble at higher volumes. Why is the king dead? Well, because I think this one, the Cambridge Audio SX50, much better, much more cohesive in the mid-range, doesn't have as many bumps and troughs in the mid-range. This one does. I still like this one, but it can be a bit much on top. And because there is a trough in the mid-range, you lose out on some of that magic. It's okay. I still love you. I just don't love you as much as the SX50. You're not my favorite speaker anymore. Gonna be okay though. Still at $125, I think these are still a good deal. But the problem with these is that they got a little bit too big for their britches, and they go up to $200 at their highest price. And I just don't think they're worth it. The SX50, I don't really notice as going on sale ever, but you may be able to find an open box or something like that. But for $200, you're getting something that has more bass than it really should have. That bass is very clean, very detailed. You also get a mid-range that I don't even think is cool. I think it's right neutral. It's right where it's supposed to be. It resolves so much detail that it's just addictive to listen to. These would be a great desktop speaker, but they would also be a great speaker in any room, especially if you can put a high-pass filter and get a sub on them, even in a big room. They do great. These remind me a little bit of the Morel Avira bookshelf speakers I got, and they come in at $1,200. Now, these, of course, aren't going to do what the Aviras can do, because the Aviras have a 6.5-inch woofer, a lot bigger enclosure, so they're just going to play a lot better. But the overall sound tonality, I think, is very similar. I really don't know what else to say. If you keep reasonable expectations with how loud you're going to play them, I don't see how anybody couldn't just love this speaker. If you like this video and you're on a budget, you may love this video where I talk about building an entire system for less than $350. If you can stretch that out a little bit, maybe $450, you can use this speaker instead of the speaker that I talked about in that video. Jeez, I almost had it and then I screwed it up right at the end. I will link that video right here. You should really check it out. So, don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen maybe with your new Cambridge Audio SX50s and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.